Ronald Acuña Jr. is back. Yes, welcome on in to Braves Today, a production of the Believe Podcast Network and presented to you by FanDuel. I'm your host, Lindsey Crosby, author of the Braves Today newsletter over at bravestoday.com. I want to talk about the shortstop position, Jorge Mateo versus Ha-Seong Kim, what the Braves are going to do here going forward and what they should do. I want to talk about the great injury update news that we got yesterday, with the news from yesterday that Hurston Waldrip will start a rehab assignment this week. But before we do all of that, the biggest development of the season so far for the Atlanta Braves is the fact that Ronald Acuña Jr. is back. He had an amazing 4-game stretch. Let's talk about what he did, how rarefied, what rarefied air he went into with this, and what this means for Atlanta going forward, besides the obvious, hey, adding an MVP caliber talent is a good thing. Because the Braves right now sit with the best record in baseball. They are 40-20, and Saturday's win against Cincinnati meant that they were not only the first team to 40 wins, but it was the first time in franchise history that they got to 40 wins before June 1st. It's the first time ever they were at 40 wins by the end of May. So, quite literally, you can say this is the greatest start to a season in franchise history. And obviously, how do you define that, right? Do you define that by wins? Do you define that by winning percentage? Do you define that by run differential and all of that? But again, Braves, 667 winning percentage, best in baseball. First team to 40 wins. Next closest is LA at 38. And then after that, the Rays and the Yankees are at 36. And then it's a lot of 32s, 31s. Brewers are at 35 maybe. Run differential plus 109. They are second in baseball at runs scored at 316. So the Washington is ahead of them by 8 runs. But the run differential is the second best because LA's gotten theirs to plus 129. But 98% of that was built without Ronald Acuña Jr. Going into Thursday's game in Boston, Ronald had played in 42 of the team's 56 games. Had to do math in my head for a second there, sorry. And his numbers were very much not Ronald Acuña Jr.-esque. He was hitting 236 with a 695 OPS. He was drawing plenty of walks, 351 on base. But going into Thursday's finale in Boston, Ronald's on base was higher than his slug of 344. He had a 351 on base and a 344 slug, which is ridiculous. 2 total home runs. He was on pace to finish the season, if you round up, to 8 homers. He had stolen 8 bags. He was on pace to finish with 31, which is great. But he was also on pace to finish with 158 strikeouts to 100 walks and 85 runs scored, 46 RBI. Just not where you normally see Ronald Acuña Jr. And a lot of different reasons that you can go in here and you can say, hey, Ronald Acuña Jr. is not the same guy so far to start the year. When you dove into the profile, there were things. He was whiffing too much. He was striking out roughly league average. We're not even getting into defense and things like that. I'm not even going to talk about that today, but obviously all of that. And you could see teams were throwing him more breaking balls, trying to find ways to get him out. But even when they were throwing him fastballs, he wasn't doing his damage. Ronald Acuña Jr. this season is hitting .229 on fastballs. A little bit of that is some random variance against him. I'm trying to get better about not saying luck. People get mad when you say luck. Random variance against him. His expected batting average is a 253. And you can really see the random variance against him on the slugging numbers against fastballs. An actual 390, but an expected of 514. Right? And so just a significant difference in what he was actually producing and what he should have. And this is the kind of thing against an individual pitch. This is the kind of small sample size stuff that you would expect, right? This is exactly what happens from time to time. Good news is Ronald mostly fixed a lot of those issues, at least in the common perception, over the weekend. In the final game of the Boston series and the 3 games in Cincinnati versus the Reds this weekend, Ronald went 6 for 13. He drove in 9. He stole 4 bags in 5 chances. He walked 7 times to 3 strikeouts. And he hit 5 home runs. Ronald went deep 5 times in a 4-game span. He had the grand slam in Boston, and then he had a home run on Friday, 2 on Saturday, and another on Sunday. And we got all of the, as we are bound to do, we got all of the glowing, here are the weird stats that Ronald Acuña Jr. was able to hit with this. This is why I love baseball, right? This game's been around for over 100 and something years, and you just get the weirdest stats sometimes. In this case, after game 3, we got something, shout out to OptaStats. That's the official account for Stats Perform, where they go and they do interesting little factoids. Ronald Acuña Jr., after the 3 games, the first 2 in Cincinnati and the first one in Boston, the last one in Boston, it was the only MLB player in the modern era, which is defined as 1900 and since 1900, to have a 3-game span where he hit 4 home runs and stole 4 bases and walked 4 times. And being honest, I did not expect him to be the only player to have done that over a 3-game span. It really feels like somebody else should have done that. And as I understand, the tough part of this is the walks. I guess most guys, when they are locked in, they're not choosing to take pitches and walk because they're always swinging and trying to do damage, right? If you're on a heater, you want to keep riding this heater until you're no longer on the heater. You want to keep swinging at stuff. Ronald's still taking his walks. I don't think, if I remember right, I think only one of those walks was intentional. They intentionally walked him to get to Michael Harris. And Harris absolutely made them feel bad for it. And then when you add in the home run he hit on Sunday, he entered a new group. And the names here, the 4 names in this group are wild. This was a shout out to Sarah Langs of MLB.com. Just has the absolute best stats in the world. Since the modern stolen base rule was adopted, so 1898. And side note, that's one of the reasons why people say modern era a lot. It's just easy to start in 1900. It corresponds with the stolen base rule and a couple other rule changes and things like that. Players with 5 or more home runs and 4 or more stolen bases in a 4-game span since the stolen base rule was implemented. Sarah Langs found 4 people. Ronald Acuña Jr. this year, Shohei Ohtani in 2024, Eric Davis in 1987, and Willie Mays in 1958. And if I remember this right, I think the 24 Ohtani, he was MVP. And then 58 Mays, I think he was like the runner-up for MVP. And then Eric Davis in 1987 doesn't get as much attention as probably he should. He was an all-star that year. He was like 9th place finisher for MVP or something, but he had a Gold Glove, a Silver Slugger, and an all-star selection. So we don't have this in baseball, but I kind of feel like we should come up with our own version of the EGOT. If you win Gold Glove and Silver Slugger and you're an all-star in the same season, you probably should get recognized for that. He finished that year with 37 homers, 50 stolen bases. That was the Andre Dawson MVP year. He led baseball with 49 homers and 137 RBI. But Davis hit 293, 399, 593 with 120 runs and 100 RBI that year, en route to what is a very good career. By the way, Eric Davis, May 29th is his birthday. So happy birthday, just turned 64. Love that for you, Eric. But just a dominant weekend from Ronald Acuña Jr. And the type of weekend, if you think about where Atlanta is this season and how they did it without Ronald contributing much until this last 4-game stretch, and how they did it without Austin Riley contributing a ton, it is important to point out for Austin Riley, and I think a place where everybody forgets, there's 2 things to point out with Riley. We're going to get into a deeper dive on him a different day, probably. But 1, he does have 8 home runs and 32 RBI, which is not nothing, right? He's still been getting those opportunities. He's still been doing okay. And in the month of May, he has a 722 OPS. It's not where you want him to be, right? But he went from a 68 WRC plus in March and April to a 100 WRC plus now. So it's better. Much better than it was, right? Anyway, in just a minute, let's talk about the news from Alex Anthopoulos that Hurston Waldrip starts rehab this week and what the Braves do from here. We'll do that next, right here on Braves Today. But first, this episode is brought to you by IQ Bar, our exclusive snack, hydration, and coffee sponsor. IQ Bar protein bars, IQ Mix hydration mixes, and IQ Joe mushroom-infused coffees are the delicious, low-sugar brain and body fuel you need to win your day. The Ultimate Sampler Pack is a great way to try all the IQ Bar products and flavors. You get 9 IQ bars, 8 IQ Mix sticks, and 4 IQ Joe sticks. And all IQ Bar products are clean label certified and entirely free from gluten, dairy, soy, GMOs, and artificial ingredients. With over 20,000 5-star reviews and counting, more people than ever are fueling their busy lifestyles with IQ Bar's brain and body boosting bars, hydration mixes, and mushroom coffees. And their Ultimate Sampler Pack includes all 3. Right now, IQ Bar is offering Braves Today listeners 20% off of all IQ Bar products, including the Ultimate Sampler Pack, plus free shipping. To get your 20% off, text MLB to 64000. That's MLB to 64000. That's MLB to 64000. Measures and data rates may apply. See terms for details. Okay, so we got some really fun news yesterday about Hurston Waldrip being on the way back from his elbow procedure. The Braves Vision broadcast brought on Alex Anthopoulos to talk about a couple different topics. They're going to be releasing some of that stuff throughout the week here, but he did address, he addressed the role player edition like Martín Pérez and what some of these guys have done. But he also talked about injury returns. And we got some news on Hurston Waldrip, some really great news. I grabbed the clip, and let me play that for you real quick.
Hurston Waldrip will be starting a rehab on Monday. He's already done an up-down live BP, which is basically the equivalent of like 2 innings. So he's throwing 96 to 99 at this point. I mean, last time he was doing that, he got hurt, but he feels great. You guys know we always like to add starters when we can. We have a long stretch of games at the end of June, and that's something that maybe we'll try to add a 6th starter, do something like that. So we'll see how that goes.
So Hurston Waldrip's going to go out on rehab this week. And with him saying Monday, what that tells me is that Waldrip is probably going to the complex to rehab, at least initially. And when I say go to the complex, let me clarify. He has been in Northport, if I remember right, for a month now. I remember somebody sent me a text about a month ago saying that that Hurston's now throwing in Florida. And he'll make, the way that Braves typically do this, is he'll make a starter or 2 down there. And he's not the only player rehabbing there, by the way. The Braves have Blake Burkhalter is in the complex league right now rehabbing. Carter Holton is as well. So is Brett Sears. And then outfielder, I think outfielder Owen Carey is there. But what he'll do is he'll make a start or two down there, and then they'll move him up. The question that I have is, how exactly are they going to treat this as far as when he moves up? Are they going, because there's two options here. With the guys who are out for a long time, for something like Tommy John, they start them in complex, and then oftentimes they'll move them to a lower level affiliate and then to Gwinnett. I assume he's going to start today or tomorrow. And if it's just one rehab start, I'm really curious to see where he goes. Because in essence, this is like his spring training. He's building up like it's spring training. And so 3 of the 4 affiliates are at home this week. Augusta's at home, Gwinnett's at home, Rome's at home. I could see a scenario where he makes one start in Northport, and if they feel good about it, they then send him to Rome, and he would make a start probably over the weekend. I think the timing would work out Saturday maybe. Starts today in Northport. He's like Saturday or whatever in Rome. Maybe they push him to Sunday. If they want him to make more than one start in Northport before he moves up, then it's a possibility they would go straight to AAA. Probably depends on how he looks too, right? The hard part is next week, the only affiliate that is at home is Columbus, AA Columbus. Everybody else is on the road. Augusta, Gwinnett, Rome, all on the road. So curious to see what they do there, how they treat that. But I think the big thing here when it comes to Hurston Waldrip is, what is the plan when it's time for him to come back? Those of you who are also subscribed to the newsletter, by the way, a longer version of this, much more detail, went out on Monday morning for Braves Today subscribers. But rehab assignments are 20, 21 days. And then you've got to make a decision on Waldrip. And he does have a minor league option. So you could just send him to the minors. The problem with that, and we've talked about this before, this is his last option year. Because Atlanta has been very aggressive with some of these prospects and when they've brought them up. He is on his final option year already. Just like AJ Smith-Shawver. When he gets optioned down, that is potentially his final option year. You do have to spend 20 days in the minors to actually use the minor league option. If they send him down, he makes 1 or 2 more starts, and then they call him up at 15 days, he doesn't use that final option year. You spend 20 days in the minors, you use the option year. So there's a couple options on what they're going to do. And option number 1 might just be roll with 6 guys. You heard AA allude to it. They have a longer stretch in there. Now, it's not the 13 games in 13 days, which, by the way, we've done twice this year. We did that to open the season. We had another 13 game and 13 day stretch in May. This is a stretch of 9 consecutive games, then an off day, and then I think it's 3 more. But the problem is, because of the travel, they're at home for the first half of this, then they leave and go to San Diego. They have the off day on the road, and then they play San Francisco. So because of the travel, logistically, it's one continuous road trip. The timing of this is if Waldrip's rehab does start today, then he needs to be activated by June 22nd, which is the start of the road portion of that. So what they could do, 9 games in 9 days, take him with them for San Diego, and he goes into the rotation as the 6th starter. And I think the way you would try to line up the starts would be you would activate him on that Monday when he has to be activated. and have him start that day. And in essence, on the road trip, you would have an off day in there, and you would have 6 starters for the 6 games you'd play in 7 days. So you're probably trying to buy a little extra rest. You probably go with guys on regular rest the first portion of the trip, and then you buy extra rest there by inserting Waldrep. You push everybody back a little bit. And what that would do is your rotation would be in some sort of order. This is not the skill-based order. This is the order based on how they're going to start this week against Toronto, which we'll preview tomorrow, by the way. Bryce Elder, Grant Holmes, Chris Sale, Martín Pérez, Spencer Strider, Hurston Waldrip. It would be that order, right? Elder starts on Tuesday. He starts tomorrow. And again, we'll preview that series tomorrow because Toronto's in a weird place right now. So you would have to drop a reliever to do this. Dylan Dodd is an option. I think they'd rather keep him if at all possible. And so Anthony Molina would be the odd guy out. He is in that final spot, the one that they've rotated through. They've had Victor Medeiros there. They had Carlos Carrasco there multiple times and then DFA'd him, and then he re-signed on a minor league deal. Right now it's Molina because of the 15-day thing. So that absolutely is an option, is you run a man short in the pen and you have 6 starters. And the thing about doing that is Dylan Dodd can give you length. He can't go 5 innings anymore, but you can get 2 innings out of Dodd. You could maybe stretch him to a third if you need to. Ronaldo Lopez can give you length. The last couple times he's been out, he hasn't had to do it. But AA said in that same interview, they still view him as a starter. Didier Fuentes, they still view him as a starter. He's a guy that his last couple outings, 28 pitches, 26 pitches, some of that was just the inning he was in and how it unfolded. But some of that, too, was them trying to push him a little bit more. So, yes, you would be running a short pen if you get rid of Molina to activate Waldrep. But you would have 3 guys in Fuentes, Lopez, and Dodd who could give you length if you needed it. So if you had 1 short start in that span, you could survive it. The first time you have 2 short starts, that's where you're in trouble. And that's what AA said when we asked him last fall about a 6-man rotation and how hard that is. Is, hey, first time you have a guy get absolutely blown up and leave incredibly early, your pen's burnt. Which, yeah. But even after that stretch, you're going to have to make a decision. And it's optioning down Waldrep or moving either Martín Pérez or Grant Holmes to the pen. And there's cases for and against both of those moves, right? I do believe that Waldrep doesn't need to burn that option. I think him having the flexibility to go down to start 2027, if he's not ready, is more important. You need the flexibility there because you could potentially have a bunch of rotation options going into next spring. And several of them don't have any flexibility. Pulling up the depth chart here real quick. You would have Chris Sale, Strider, Schwellenbach. Those are guys that we expect if you're healthy, you are in the rotation, right? You would have Elder, who is out of options and has shown, at least so far this year, he deserves to be in the rotation. You would have Grant Holmes, Ronaldo Lopez, J.R. Ritchie, Didier Fuentes, Hurston Waldrip. I think I just named 5 more guys. I think you're at 8, 9 names now. Lots of options. Lots of guys, lots of candidates. So save the options, the minor league options, so that you're not forced to stick 4 starters into the pen. Right? And I think we're all agreed that you don't really want to trade a bunch of guys away because you have too many starters, because we've seen how having too many starters can very quickly become having not enough starters. If it's me, and again, I go into this in a lot more detail in the newsletter. If it's me, Grant Holmes is probably the guy I'm moving to the bullpen. Assuming that Waldrep stuff is there and that he's ready to resume a starting role. And you heard AA, 96 to 99 in this simulated 2-inning game, right? Holmes is the guy because for some reason, maybe it's his sequencing, maybe it's his pitch usage changing, right? He improved the four-seamer and added a sinker, cut back on the cutter. I shouldn't say cut back on cutter, right? It's too alliterative. He really struggles the second time through. I think you don't maybe realize how bad he struggles the second time through. In the first plate appearance of the game against Grant Holmes, when he's a starter, hitters are batting 180 with a 263 on base and a 292 slug. It's 2 homers and 99 plate appearances and 2.5 strikeouts for every walk. When they come back around in the order the second time, they're hitting 302 with a 371 on base and a 640 slug. It's 8 home runs in 97 plate appearances and a strikeout to walk rate of 190. I went to go look for some comparisons of what these stat lines are to try to help explain. The first time through the order, opposing hitters are essentially Nick Allen with a lower batting average. The second time through the order, opposing hitters are Yordan Alvarez. That's not sustainable. That's it. You got to figure out what's wrong with Grant Holmes if you want him to stay as a starter, or you got to move him to the pen. So my preferred course of action when Hurston Waldrip comes back, assuming he is good and ready, is moving Grant Holmes back into that utility pitcher role in the pen instead of moving Martín Pérez. And then Martín Pérez would be the potential move when Spencer Schwellenbach comes back. And he said in that same interview, he's throwing. He's not at the point of getting ready for a rehab assignment like Waldrip is. So, there you go. And again, this might not even be a question because somebody might go down between now and when Waldrip comes back. Who knows? But if everybody's healthy, I think that's the best course of action. In just a minute, let's talk about the shortstop position and how ownership of it may have changed over the weekend. We'll do that next, right here on Braves Today. One of the big stories to come out of last week was just how utterly dominant Jorge Mateo was. Atlanta grabbed him as a depth option after Ha-Seong Kim got hurt. And I remember talking to a couple really smart baseball people that I trust, one of who was a Braves fan. And early in the offseason, we were talking about wouldn't Jorge Mateo be a great addition to this bench? Going into the series versus Boston, Jorge Mateo was hitting 300 with a 794 OPS. He'd hit 2 home runs. One of them came off a position player, yes. 6 stolen bases, have been caught 1 time. Scored 17 runs. That was also in 64 plate appearances. Because he would start at shortstop sometimes, but oftentimes he would get put in late. He would get put in, somebody would be pinch hit for. Dubon would cover their position, and he would move to shortstop. He'd come in for shortstop. So he entered a game in the 9th, or the 6th, or the 8th, or the 7th. This is just me going to the game logs. He wouldn't get a lot of starts there, right? But with Ha-Seong Kim struggling since his return, he got a start for game 2 in Boston. And it's around the same time that Walt Weiss said the shortstop position was going to be, quote, day-to-day. There was no set starter at shortstop right now while Kim was struggling. And they would play it by ear. And Kim decided, I'm just going to play well enough where they can't do anything but let me have the game every day, a spot every day. Gosh. It's almost like I don't talk for a living here. In the 5 games, the last 2 games of the Boston series, and all 3 games in Cincinnati, he made 4 starts at shortstop and then was at DH for the final game in Cincinnati. He went 7 for 19 with 2 home runs and a double, drove in 5, scored 5 runs, stole a bag. And in kind of an improvement for him, only struck out twice. Because when you look at all of the numbers for Jorge Mateo, one, he doesn't qualify on StatCast leaderboards. A lot of his offensive numbers are pretty good as far as the input stuff. Barrel percentage of 11.3%, hard hit rate of 49.1%. A lot of that is top 15% in baseball. We don't actually have the official percentage numbers because of, again, he doesn't qualify for the boards yet. But a lot of the process stats at the bottom are where he struggles. 30% or 29% whiff rate, 28% strikeout rate, 6% walk rate. He's chasing almost 40% of the time, right? And when you look at what Jorge Mateo is doing from a results perspective, he's doing really well. His batting average on balls in play is .404. The league average is .292. Now, speedy guys will always run a little bit of a better BABIP, right? You can beat out an infield grounder, things like that. They'll always run a slightly better BABIP than the league. But 100+ points? And I say that, it was at like 420 entering the weekend. It's already coming down a little bit. But this is a classic example, and shout out to Walt Weiss for this, of saying, hey, this is the hot hand, and I don't care who's making what money. We're going to ride the hot hand until it's no longer hot. And he did talk about the book's not closed on Ha-Seong Kim. Let me go grab a quote here. This is a shout out to friend of the show, Chad Bishop of the AJC. Quote, it's the bottom line in this league, right? At the end of the day, it's a meritocracy here. But the thing is, when Kim's right, he makes us better. He makes us a better team. We want that to happen, and we're doing everything we can to try and help that process along. It's just that the speed of the game is just very different from a rehab assignment, especially for guys that haven't had spring training. This carousel is going really fast, and you got to try to jump on in the middle of the season. It's difficult. But Kim is going to be fine. He's going to help us win a lot of games. He's a really good player, and we're just trying to help that process along. They're working with him off the field. He did say that Kim had a, quote, good work day on Thursday, and they have him working on some things. So they're trying to help him get more comfortable with the speed of Major League pitching, get comfortable with the defensive speed, and all of that. I do think that Mateo has more of a role he can play than maybe what he did earlier. His arm is very good. He doesn't have a ton of time at third base in his career, and none this year. And you saw when we gave Austin Riley a day off, Mauricio Dubon got that start. And that was just a day off for Riley. That was a routine day off. That was the second time this year where he was not in the starting lineup. The first time it happened, he entered after he pinch hit in the sixth and stayed in. This one, he pinch hit and then did not come into the game for defense. But Mateo being able to, a lot of time at second, being able to play outfield corner. I don't think he should be in center, having watched him do that a little bit with Baltimore. But corner outfield should be fine. Again, strong arm, really fast, can help you in a lot of ways. I think this is a situation where you have a lot of depth, and the depth has started to work itself out. We've seen the guys who are playing, the guys who are not. They'll do what they have to do to get Kim up to speed. And Walt Weiss did say that this is hard. Balancing the playing time for all of these guys is difficult. Another quote here. This is, again, shout out to Chad Bishop for this quote. Just trying to juggle these things around and move the parts around to keep everybody involved because everybody's helped us win games. And so I want to keep everybody a part of this. It'll be a lot of moving the pieces around. He did acknowledge that the hardest part is not the actual shuffling of the players and their playing time. The hard part is the shuffling of is the talking to them about it. Quote, I think the most important thing is just communicating with these guys and just tell them what you're thinking. I try to let them know when they're playing, when they're not playing ahead of time. That always helps just to keep these lines of communication open. I think players always respect that, even if they don't agree with it. And I can agree with Weiss that I think Kim's going to be fine. I know there's a lot of Braves fans who are very having seen this short sample and they just want him gone. And that's a little bit of a short-sighted thing here. He has 45 at-bats, 50 plate appearances this year. And to Weiss's point, it is very clear that the rehab assignment wasn't long enough and that he still has not caught up to where he needs to be. But when you look at the healthy version of Ha-Seong Kim, which we saw in 2022 and 3 and 4, and even a little bit late last year when he joined Atlanta for the final month, he's a guy, he doesn't swing and miss a lot. He doesn't chase a lot. He can get on base. He can steal some bags. And minus what you saw last year coming back from shoulder surgery, he can play pretty decent defense. He has a utility gold glove. So that makes it, we have two different guys on our roster with utility gold gloves. I don't necessarily think that he's an amazing defensive shortstop, but he's not bad at the position historically in his career. And given that you are 20 games over 500 and you have such a massive lead, the best thing that you can do right now for the long-term future of the team is help Ha-Seong Kim get to the point where he's desired in free agency. Because that means you can tag him with a qualifying offer after this season and get a draft pick if he signs somewhere else. I am okay if you find ways to move guys around so that you can play him enough to help him get back to his pre-shoulder surgery form. This is not me saying install him as the starter every single day going forward. But Mateo needs time in the lineup. Dubon needs time in the lineup. And knock on wood, this could all get decided by an injury tomorrow. One injury on this roster could solve all of this, and you could all of a sudden have playing time to give everybody. But the best thing long-term for this team is the best thing for this season for this team is having another above-average shortstop option in Kim. And the best thing long-term for this team is getting a qualifying offer draft pick for somebody else signing Ha-Seong Kim this offseason. So we're going to keep watching this. We'll keep seeing what he does. And as the numbers, like we were tracking with different people, as the numbers start to get better, we'll look at it and say, hey, Kim has gotten better at this or Kim has gotten better at that. It's not a lost cause. You don't need to just DFA him. It's worth continuing to try and get him there. And again, a lot of this happened off the field. The hitting guys working with him, the defensive guys working with him. He's going to get there. That'll do it for a little bit longer than expected version of Braves Today for Monday, June 1st. Please like the video. Please subscribe both here and at bravestoday.com, where we tons of newsletters coming out all the time. And we'll see you next time on Braves Today.